I have a little bit of anxiety about trying to learn a new language because I've spent a number of months earlier this year focused on learning Python. That's kind of where I started trying to learn some coding. I've been on this journey of trying to figure it out for myself, and now I've decided to, enroll in Tech Elevator. So that'll be a little interesting to try and not unlearn, but just learn something new, and so that just syntax and all that kind of stuff. But
If I may, David, I understand the concern, and the only thing I can say is you've got nothing but gain. Now, nothing. You can only gain from becoming more proficient in other languages,
yeah,
because you'll learn things, you'll bring it back, so you'll have things from the other languages that you've learned and you can provide to that. It's like so many synergies, I guess some people would say.
yeah. Yeah, and I think one of the things I talked to a recruiter several weeks ago that somebody connected me with, and she said, "Hey, I would encourage you to try to do some of the work if you can, some of the exercises in the language you're going to learn, but also see if you can just try and knock a little bit of it out in Python as well, just to kind of keep your chops there a little bit." So
Mm-hmm.
we'll just see how much bandwidth I have available to do that.
Yeah, I mean, have you? One thing that might be fun, if you're trying to find the time or whatever. I know I've done a couple the advent of code problems,
Hmm.
and it's just really enjoyable. It's it's just exciting and fun, and like solving puzzles. It has a different feel to it.
Mm.
Where you're like, ooh, this is so interesting. And it's not like you're obsessed with writing perfect code, because all you care about is getting that answer to some
Uh-huh.
extent. you know, so it takes some of that stress away. I know that when I'm writing code for work, there's this like base level of stress where it's like this code is gonna live for a long time. It needs to be good enough.
Right.
And when I'm solving a puzzle, I literally don't care. Unless I'm trying to learn a new principle or something like that. It's just like, cool, it runs.
I
I
noticed.
shared. Go ahead.
Oh, I was looking back at my answers and I noticed that I was using magic numbers all over the place. And I was like, oh my goodness, I never would have let myself do this, but I was just flying off the handle, and it was just fine.
That's awesome.
All
David,
right.
I'd
What
be
what
happy. Oh,
what's meant by magic numbers?
it's totally fine. So in your code, you need to use numbers just to represent things in real life. And if you assign them to variables without any explanation, or I'm sorry, if you use them without any explanation, it might make sense to you as the person who wrote the code. But if someone comes in and reads it later, they would have no understanding of why that number is there. And so what they say is you should, as a general rule, assign numbers that are not obvious why they are what they are to a variable with a descriptor that says this is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you come across that in the industry. You're gonna come across that a lot. You're gonna see some code and you say, "This guy must be a psychopath," but you just go ahead and have to untangle it, think like him for a few moments, and then figure out what he was trying to do, fix it, and move on.
I'm trying
Sometimes
to
more
think
than
of
a few moments.
I'm trying to think of an example. Like if you were looking at a warehouse application and say it says, okay, go to row 60 and then start over again at 0. And you might say, why 60? What's the meaning of that? Well, you don't know that the length of the pallet size happens to be 60 something. So what you would do is you'd make a variable that says length of pallet equals 60. And then when you read the code, it says, hey, get to the end of length of pallet and go back to 0. And it makes perfect sense.
Okay.
And some people would even say you should put that in a configuration variable or something like that. But at least if you're assigning it to a variable and giving it a name, you know what it represents.
Mhm.
That's
You might have to
that's the bare
explain to me
minimum.
You might have to explain what a configuration variable is to me. That might be a little more
You
vague.
can, sure. So you can oftentimes variables can be provided by either the environment or a configuration file or something along those lines,
Okay.
where it's not directly part of the code. It's something that's pulled in as the code is running. So you don't actually. There's something new and interesting I discovered this week. We were running some code at work, and we were doing the right thing where we're using environment variables to provide service credentials and stuff like that, and learned about .env files
Hmm.
where
Just gonna say that.
yeah, okay, are you using the .env package or
So I want to say in the Python projects I've been doing, there is a python-env that I use to load environment variables from a .env file, and then I think with the .NET projects, there is a configuration in Writer where I can include like a flag to pass. Or it's been a while since I set it up. I'd have to look at it again, but basically I was able to just use the IDE to tell it, hey, look at this file for my environment variables. Don't look at the environment.
it was really interesting the way I discovered it. It was kind of roundabout because I wanted to set up debugging for the application in VS Code. And I was trying to figure out how to do that. And I, was looking through the docs for the VS Code launch.json. I don't know if anybody's used that, but I was like, oh, env variables, and the way that it was like, oh, you can provide a .env file in the configuration, and then it'll pull that in. So then I dug a little bit deeper, and I'm like, this is great, because right now when we start developing, we have to like run this script. If we close down our console or whatever, now we have to run the script again to provide those env, the environment variables. It makes things a pain.
Yeah, I like it because especially with, so I've had to make a few different like cloud functions in Python, and sometimes the environment variables I don't even need to run some of the local tests, but because that file is such an easy thing and tangible thing to think about while developing, I can think about the environment variables, what I'm going to use in this environment variable, like right out the gate, because it's easy to just immediately go and add one into that file and add either like a default option or something. And so like, I guess maybe before that, I don't want to say that environment variables were an afterthought, but there was something about having like this just tangible, immediate file that I started to think about that with the development rather than sort of like, oh, I guess eventually I'll have to figure this out. I'll need this thing and I can't include it in the code. I'll throw it in the, or like the, .NET project, you do a lot of the environment variables. Or sometimes you can kind of pull them out in the startup file and add them to like a configuration object. And you're like, oh, I'm just gonna throw that code there and I'll worry about it where it's actually coming from later.
When I got started in .NET, it was web config at least. I don't know if that's the way it is now, but it was web config, web.config or app.config was the way we configured things, which is of course XML. And
there is, I think in the .NET framework stuff, which I've done very little of, that's mostly like the client I'm working for, their existing code is .NET framework, but the .NET core stuff, I must have to look. I think we mostly just like, there's some built-in like packages that let you grab variables out of the environment. And so we tend to have like a private method that runs at startup that grabs all the environment variables and adds them to like the configuration object. And then in the classes that need access to that environment variable, you just pass the configuration object through a dependency injection. But I don't know if that's a common pattern or just something that some folks on my team were doing, but that's kind of how I learned to deal with it in .NET.
Nice. Sorry, I forget how we got started down that path.
Yeah.
Oh, we were talking about magic numbers.
Yeah.
And yeah.
That's funny.
Yes. So who is doing Advent of Code? Anybody?
I started on it, but then I kind of got hung up on the regex on day 2. Because I think I need
Dude.
regex for the solution.
You probably don't need it, but it might
Yeah.
be easier with regex.
Yeah.
Uh, Is that something you struggle with?
I haven't. I touched it back in like March of this year, and I haven't gone back to it. I was just deciding
Gotcha.
actually between a regex tutorial and a D3 tutorial for like the next thing I do. I decided for D3 because that looked like fun.
I
And
really
regex-
feel like you
thing.
can learn the basics of regex in like half an hour.
Ah,
Like it's not you saying you need a class on. It's
Yeah.
you know if you just need to get a job, like if you want to write, there's some hairy stuff that you can do with regex. Don't get me wrong, like people will build like half an app with regex. It's ridiculous, but I don't know if you ever any of you ever seen the like. There's a regex that validates email addresses, and it's like 4 pages long. It's kind of incredible. Anyway,
Oh.
go ahead.
I'm gonna jump in. Would you mind? I did day 2. I don't. What is regex? Would you mind filling in what that is?
Certainly, regex is regular expressions, and they
Oh
are
yeah, I know what you're talking about.
okay.
Got all excited.
They're called in JavaScript. They use regex, which is very unusual, right? Isn't it regex with a P? I thought.
Yeah,
cool.
Okay.
but
Most places you
It's
see it, they
originally
refer to it as
Linux.
regex.
it's originally Linux thing. It's a major major Linux thing that people have used a lot actually to parse or look up backup and batches and all of that. So it's a very powerful thing. I've seen
Incredibly powerful.
databases. I've seen databases that are manipulated by regex only. That's the psychopath code, though, for sure.
I
Yeah.
honestly tend to forget about regular expressions. I got really into like parser combinators and parser combinator libraries, which is like a different approach to parsing, and I imagine a more expensive approach in most implementations than regular expressions. But because of that, like I not necessarily always parsing with a library like that, but sometimes just like for example the day 2 solution, like I didn't even think to use regular expressions. Like I just used a lot of string methods to parse the string into the different parts by splitting on specific characters or things like that, and getting it, it split into the parts that I wanted, and then I had the, kind of the data separated. But yeah, and I tend to like need regular expressions and then like look up what I need and then don't need it again long enough that I forget everything I learned and I have to go
That's
look it all up
fine.
again.
But the fact is that like you've understood the basics, and then the next time you come back to it, you're like, okay, I just need the refresher.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what I use to find numbers, or this is how I do a named capture, or something like that.
You can do some pretty neat find and replace stuff in any editor that includes regular expressions as a part of the find element. It always makes me nervous when I use regular expressions for find and replace, but it is pretty cool.
This is what I was looking forward to, because with the advent of code, I was hoping I could glean some different ways that people came to solutions. Because I know you're doing it in Go, Jake, and I think that's really cool. I know very little about that language, and I wonder. I kind of can't help but feel as a rookie that I'm doing things probably a harder way than I have to, and I'd like to see some cool tips and tricks as to how to streamline my processes.
So at work, I don't know if you are doing the admin code. I sent out a leaderboard to everyone on this, so definitely join that if you want to. It's kind of fun. I'm going to try to do a couple maybe this weekend. But at work, we actually established a channel where people share their solutions. And just maybe it was even today, I was looking at it and somebody was like, oh yeah, I stole your idea from day 2 for today. And I'm like, that is awesome.
Yeah.
Because it's just, I love that cross-pollination where people, are learning from each other and able to
We've got that
try
going
new
on.
things.
We've got that going on at Calibrity a little bit. There's not a lot of people participating. So for a while, it was mostly me and one other person. And he and I have kind of been going back and forth. And he's like he's our CTO. He is way more experienced as a developer than I am. And so, so I've been learning a lot from him. But that said, like in our conversations, like he's gone back and changed some of his solutions based off of things that that I've come up. So I think last year, I think I was a solutions were a little rougher. Oh yeah. So last year I think my solutions. I think last year my solutions were a little rougher because I was still somewhat new at programming, and I was using another. I like to use this as an opportunity to work in a newer language, something that I've maybe only got a few weeks or a few months experience with. But still I don't typically worry too much about efficiency or anything. But this time, because of that conversation, like I am thinking about efficiency a little bit more. And it was the same thing that Michael described. Like I was looking over one of my coworkers' solutions, and some of his like variable and class naming, I didn't know. I imagined it was referring to something, but I didn't know what. It wasn't like terminology I had come across. And so from that, like I learned about kind of a new data structure type, and then used it this morning to come up with probably a much better solution than I would have otherwise. So yeah, I think when you get in those conversations with other people who are solving the same problems, you really can learn a lot through that.
What was it called?
He had all these classes named like graph and vector and or not vector, vertex.
Vertice, yeah.
Vertice, yeah. I could remember the plural. I couldn't think of a singular. And edge, and so
vertex. I guess you're saying
vertex is the word I'm looking at. Yeah.
Okay.
And so he sent me, some different things to look at, and I turned out I actually had a book that covered some of this stuff, and yeah, I actually still need to look into this, this idea of a graph, as a data structure a bit more, to understand it a bit better, and some of the different at least in my implementation, I kind of I didn't use any external package or library, but in looking through his, I realized like, oh, okay, there's some Java libraries like out there just kind of ready to go to work with that data structure. But at any rate, yeah, like there's I think that one of the days, he and I took a solution from like an O of n cubed to like an O of n solution just by like back and forthing, like oh yeah, actually if we did this, we could reduce this one extra for loop, and oh actually if we do this, we can remove all of them and we only need one, and so it's kind of cool to be able to have those kinds of conversations.
You're scratching an itch of what I was hoping to learn from this. Is Big O is going to be a conversation point I was going to bring up later with nested for loops.
Awesome.
Because I know what it is, but learning the tricks of how to avoid it is something I'm not that familiar with. And I felt like the very first day was a great example of a simple version of explanation of Big O.
Man, I just brute forced day one and then moved on.
Same here. I was actually thinking about it. I'm not sure there's that many optimizations that you can do to day one.
So one of my coworkers, I saw that so there's a third person who's doing it now. He does his in Kotlin, and I haven't really looked into this too much, but I noticed that he used some kind of library that did all the hard work for him, essentially. But like it was good to know, I think, that there may be, depending on the language, a library out there that can do that work and probably do it more efficiently than you could with your with your for loops. And
did he vectorize or something?
Let me see if I can. I think I still have it pulled up.
Because that's a thing where you may not be able to reduce the operational complexity exactly, but you can do those operations in parallel.
Okay.
So
Yes.
I don't know if y'all are familiar with that, but like, for instance, if you look at machine learning algorithms or things like that, they all run on GPUs, and the power that GPUs have isn't particularly running faster. It's that they can do a ridiculous number of operations all at the same time. So it's you say, oh, multiply these numbers, and the CPU will say, okay, done. Well, you tell the GPU, I've got this giant vector, and once you multiply by this other giant vector, it says, oh, done, because it just does them all in one computation.
Interesting.
So
Yeah. Go ahead, Jake. Sorry.
Oh, I was just say something else that is worth looking into, Randy, and just anyone else who's working through things like this and maybe learning or continuing to learn on some algorithm and data structure stuff. But memoization is something really worth looking in, and I need to figure out what day it is real quick. I don't remember. It's either today's or yesterday's. I'm gonna find it real quick. I think it was today's.
Is that minimalism or like meme, like repetition, or like miniature?
I'll put it in there.
Okay, yeah. It sounds like you're saying memorization, but like a 1-year-old.
Like a mimic.
Memoization.
It comes from memo. Like, yeah. So I don't know if
And-
you've heard of React.memo. Go ahead, Jake. Sorry.
And the idea is that if you're performing a lot of operations, especially if any of them are expensive operations, you save the result so that the next time you need to do that same operation, you can look it up and see if it was saved. And if it was, you don't have to do it again. And today was like this great kind of aha moment for me on how powerful that could be. I had so there's this tree-like structure in day 10, and you're trying to count how many paths, like possible unique paths that are through the tree. And, I had sort of a recursive solution without going into the details, and it worked perfect for the test cases, but for the actual puzzle input, it was just probably not even exponentially, whatever is bigger than that, like larger. And so it just was taking way too long, like a minute or two later, and it still hadn't finished executing. So in my kind of recursive function calls, I added a map, essentially a map that just said, hey, whenever you hit this this vertex, check and see if you've already calculated the number of paths off of it. And if you have, don't do that again. Just give me the number you got last time. And so if you think about that at first, like they're all going to come back no, but eventually they're almost all going to come back yes. And instead of so with recursive operations, like making that like a recursive call could be calling the same function 20, 30, 40, 50 times. But then the next time it only calls it once instead of recursively those 50 times. So it went from not finishing after 2 minutes to I benchmarked it at 27,000 nanoseconds. So like not even a full millisecond for it to complete that. Go apparently is extremely fast. I'm finding, and it's really easy to benchmark your stuff. I just learned that today too, and I'm going to start doing that with every day. In fact, I might even go back and add some of the benchmark testing to the previous days. But yeah, so it went from like not finishing at all, basically, at least not in any kind of reasonable time, to almost instantaneously finishing the calculation just by adding that little like that caching piece where you say like, okay, if you've done this before, don't do it again. Just give me the result you got back last time.
It's essentially a type of caching. Yeah.
Yeah, Randy, if you, I know I posted the link to my repo on LinkedIn, and I saw you commented on that. If you go to day 10 and work your way down to a file called graph.go, I realize it's a new language. If you want to talk through it at some point, let me know. But that's kind of where I'm using both recursion and memoization to solve that kind of tree pathing.
You got me into that stuff and you are still keeping me interested. That is cool. I can't wait to look at it. Hey, Sarah, I saw that you said a little bit of advent of code. I'm curious, did you have any fun with any of the adventures?
I've completed one day so far.
Right
And
on.
in that first day, the first thing I thought was, oh, I could probably write this algorithm that uses some hash tables that I could just write nested for loops. I don't care. And like
Yeah.
Go of n cubed, like I don't like this.
Eh,
I solved the problem, so
yeah. And it frankly ran fast enough for me in Node,
Yeah.
which is not fast. So it's like, nah.
It
ran fast
very
enough in
for me.
Python. Like,
Right. Sorry, what was that, Jake?
Oh, I'll say it ran fast for me as well. And I, like, I don't know. After seeing it and realizing, I was like, oh, I'm either going to have to really look into something fancy, or I'm just going to have to do this quick and dirty and just hope that day two is better. And that's what I chose.
Right. Yep.
I'm always conflicted because I never know what language to do them in. Like, do I do it one like I know will be fast so that way I can just get it done, or do I do it in one to practice my skills in another language, or do I do it in something brand new just to say like, hey, I picked up a new language over advent of code, or do I aim for like most points possible, or just to get it? I don't know.
I'll even
I know
use
like one
Advent
friend
of,
where he's building this elaborate like framework and testing system for all of his days. I'm like, what?
I'll use Advent of Code if I'm learning a new language. Like in July, I'll still go once I start to feel kind of comfortable with the basics. I'll still look up old Advent of Code years or ones I've done before in another language. And I say this as if I've done it a ton. I only found out about Advent of Code last year, but I have revisited 2019 and I even went back to check out 2018 a few times. So I feel like you could, if you really want to get it done quickly and get the most points, you could always use something you're really like fast at and familiar with. But then later on, it's still a good resource for learning new languages, I think, too, especially if you're not sure what else to do to kind of help with the learning process.
I told myself some year I'm gonna like start at midnight as soon as the problem's released for every single day and try to do them as fast as possible, as scrappy and hacky as possible, just to
Yeah.
see if I
I
can
was
make the
wondering.
leaderboard of the whole thing.
I was wondering if they released it in the morning or at night, because that seems like torture if
It's
I've got to get up
midnight
early.
Eastern.
Yeah. I've done a few at midnight, mostly because the past few weeks I've been having trouble sleeping, and it's like, I'm up anyway, I might as well sit down and see if I can knock this out quickly. But ideally I wait and do it the next day, or I guess technically later that same day.
So I know, Jake, you said you're doing a little chat at Calibrity, and we've got one at Kroger. Would you all be interested in one for this group, like where we can share our code, or would anything be appealing to you as far as that?
Yeah, so honestly, like that's why I posted my repo on LinkedIn, is because I didn't know how else to get it to the TN Tech folks. And it's not that I'm connected to like a bunch of them on there, but like at work, it was easy. I could just throw it up in the same channel that we posted the leaderboard information. But I was thinking the same thing, and I just didn't know how else to like make it available other than, social media. So.
Sure. So my first thought is, we have the Momentum Slack, so I could just create a channel in there. I'm trying to think through other options. There's got to be, a variety of options, but that's kind of the first thing that comes to mind. Or I could create a Slack just for TN Tech if y'all are interested in that. But I'm sure we all have too many Slacks as it is. TMS, too many Slacks.
Yeah.
I'm on those Slacks. I'd be happy to. And I just realized TN Tech is TNT. That's a really cool acronym.
Thanks.
It's kind of a funny acronym because like T in tech sort of has one like set of imagery that it makes you think of, and then TNT has like a very, very different.
Totally different.
Strongly agree.
You know, one was is pinkies up, right?
I don't know. If you start calling it TNT, it might get really popular and blow up.
Trying to keep it
Wah, wah.
best secret.
Yes.
I'll just leave. It's fine.
David, I don't know if you have any interest in doing that, but if you do that or anybody else, I'd be happy to work through any problems with anybody because it's fun for me. I'm still on the newer side of programming, so it's always fun to talk it out with people. I'd be happy to do that.
I sent it to Rita and Jessica. That's the leaders of Tech Elevator, and I guess not instructors, but like they run it. I don't know, and said, "Hey, maybe the students would be interested in this." So hopefully they'll pick it up.
Randy, if you wanted to help me with the regex on day 2, I would take you up on that.
Absolutely, that sounds like fun.
Okay.
And I wonder how much we can do that later. We can do that. Talk about it now. Anytime is fine by me.
You know what? I'm gonna go ahead and create that channel right now.
That sounds
so
perfect.
I don't forget about it. I got to disconnect from VPN first. So might drop for half a second here.
Why don't we just leave the Zoom going for all of December and then just post our results in the chat?
Leave it open.
I mean, there is the fact that the Zoom chat is like the worst. You know,
It'll be a long recording when you're done, but
right? Exactly. Right. I love that Zoom chat was like, all right, we need to ship an MVP chat, you know, like the minimum viable price, let's do this. And then they're like, okay, it was good. A year later, no, it's just still good. It's okay. What about, should we do something to it? No, it's okay. It's fine.
In a few more years, they'll announce that they're canceling Zoom chat. They're no longer going to be supporting it.
Yes.
URLs to link anywhere? Probably not.
That's I think the thing that I liked about the Advent was I never got into katas, I think is how you pronounce it, just daily exercises and challenges. For some reason, they seemed like extra work to me, not extra fun. And this introduced me to it, and it's great. I finished 8 hours of work. I go home and I'm excited to do a little bit more coding. I was curious if anyone in the group has other reading, blogs, exercises, things that they like to do that are extracurricular.
I've done some HackerRank stuff, but I was starting to figure out that I'm still working towards my next job, and I started to realize if I spend all day on HackerRank, that's not really anything I can put on a portfolio or point to. So I kind of discontinued that about a month ago because I wanted to focus more on like tutorials and building websites. So
the frustrating thing is you need the like real world projects and things like that for the portfolio, but then you're going to get asked the HackerRank questions in the interview.
You're right.
Yeah.
Kind of, yeah. And I say this pretty frequently, but I feel like I can't say it enough. If you are looking for a job, do not hesitate to ask around your network, friends and family, do you need something built with code? Is there a problem that you've been trying to solve that I can help you solve? Even if it's a 2-day project, that means that you had to gather requirements, talk to the customer, deliver on the requirements, and then you make some money out of it. Oftentimes, even if it's only got $100, but now you're a paid developer. How cool is that, right? So I'm passionate about it because that's how I got my start. I spent 3 months learning to code and building this thing. And I think I got like $3,000 for it, which, you know, if you factor that over the hours I spent, it was terrible. But considering like I then had a portfolio project that is still running in production, that's not nothing. So
Cool.
yeah. All right, should this be a private channel or public in Momentum? I mean, I don't
Maybe
know.
maybe it depends on our solutions to the and whether we want that public or not.
Possessive. I have no objection to either.
So, Randy, I don't know if this necessarily answers your question, you know, in terms of like, you know, just things like the katas to do for fun. But for me, I think it really depends on. So there are a lot of things about, you know, this work that I find interesting and fun, but I also can get, you know, bored or burnt out if I spend too much time on any, you know, one thing. So I kind of find it changes, you know, over time. Like I really enjoy, I find it really fun to learn new languages, but it's not something I can do all the time. You know, number one, I just don't know that it's productive to do it all the time, but also like after a while, it kind of going through the beginning stages gets old, and you want to move on and do kind of something else. I've had a lot of opportunity to get into, you know, different cloud services and things like that, and as a result, you know, gotten to the point where, again, not all the time I'll get burnt out on this, but sometimes like I find it enjoyable just to find like some introductory tutorials and things, and there's something really nice about like getting to the point with some of those things where like it's not scary anymore, where you're like, yeah, I'm gonna deploy a compute instance and then tear it down because it doesn't matter. You know, like you just it's no longer like a fearful thing. It's like I'm gonna do this. I'm just gonna throw this out there and dig it in. And so so I guess what I just kind of wanted to say is, you know, for me, it sort of comes in, it's almost like a cycle. Like I'll press into something that's interesting and enjoyable, you know, for a time, but when it stops being that, unless it's like critical that I, you know, learn that thing or do that thing in that moment, I'll try to find something that's still big picture is going to help me, you know, kind of grow as a developer, but is different enough that it kind of rekindles that excitement again. So, you know, and I'm kind of with you, like right now, because of advent of code, and I think because of these work conversations, algorithms and things like that, it's kind of an exciting thing to be like looking into and talking about and learning. But in another month or two, it may not be, and that's okay. You know, you know, I don't think you have to be like, okay, this is good for me. I need to just do katas every day now for the rest of my life. Do them for a season and then take a break, and then, you know, come back, and you'll have to, you know, brush off some rust, but you'll also, you know, make some good progress, and you know, beyond kind of the last time you invested in, you know, whatever it is. And that's kind of my thinking anyway.
I like that. I like that a lot. Reminds me of other hobbies that I have. It's amazing when you can feel burnt out on a hobby. Like, you're not supposed to feel that way, are you?
Yeah.
No, that's being human. And so go find something else that ignites you. I like that. Thank you.
There is another thing also that the tutorial purgatory. I don't think that's the right terminology. You don't want to get stuck on those. Number one, you will never learn everything about one language. And the good thing about what Mike says, if you can find a project, then you can focus on one specific thing, you learn it and move on. At least
Focus on
because once you
delivering,
get fun,
right?
yeah. Yeah, that's the most important thing. You need to deliver things. At the end of the day, I mean, any school you go to, even if you go to Tech Elevator, they will teach you the fundamentals. What's a
Mhm.
loop, what's a, what's an if statement, while statement, and then based on that, you build your knowledge. And you go to a job where they throw you into a completely new language that you never heard of. You're not going to learn the whole thing about that language, but at least you're going to learn what you need to get to a point where you can deliver things. And I think that's the most important thing, at least from the perspective of a junior developer.
What? Thanks, Mo.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So just FYI, I dropped the link to that channel in the chat if you like. So I don't know if you all are in the Momentum DevCon Slack. If not, I can get you the link to get in or invite or whatever like that. So, but yeah. And if we outgrow that, we can move on to something else. You know, best start simple, I think. Do the, it's like there's so many different principles there, but yeah, do the thing that works, then complicated as necessary.
That's a good, since we've been talking about advent of code, like I think that is a good approach, especially if you are struggling with a problem. Like, don't worry about making it elegant, making it efficient, like just make it work, make it as ugly and dirty as possible, and just get it working. There are some times when like I'm looking at a problem and I know it's probably going to take that I'm going to have to create some layers of abstraction, or I might even have to get into like a recursive solution. But when I can't fully picture what that is, I start writing it out like without any of that, just logically, like what would be the step one thing I would do? And I just write the code that does that. And then step two, and it's like the most absurd. It's like someone posted this a long time ago, or not too long ago, on Twitter, and people were kind of like making fun of it, but other people were pointing out like, no, this is actually like kind of a good thing. Someone had written as one of their first programs, a calculator, where like you put in the numbers and the function that handles the numbers says like, if A is 1 and B is 1, return 2, and it went through like literally hundreds of numbers in this conditional, right? And like that is not elegant code, but damn it, it works. At least to some extent, it works. And so sometimes I think like it's not pretty, and it's not your final solution. I think sometimes, especially when you're new, giving yourself permission to write bad code can actually be a challenge, because you have that sort of imposter syndrome of like, I don't want to look like I don't know what, even to myself, I don't want to look like so I'm not even going to let it hit the editor until I've got this, done well. Like, no, like write it. It's write terrible
I have
code.
to do this right. I have to do it right the first time, which is totally ridiculous.
It's only a bad thing.
Are you feeling that, like, David?
Done,
I feel it. So you're doing like this, and you're just like.
So I started working on a project. I got this idea, and it's funny that we've been talking about advent of code, because I got this idea of doing an advent calendar. So I don't know if you're familiar with advent calendars, right? But the idea is that they're the old traditional Christmas thing. You get this little cardboard paper one. You open the doors for each. And I got this idea. I had this idea, like I remember doing this little project where it just had these little pictures. It was on a little Udemy course that I was kind of working my way through, and it just had this layout of these pictures, and I was like, oh, that would be a cool idea. Like make these little squares and just click on the picture and then have it open for each day, right? And I started working on it, and I've kind of gotten it partway through, but it's not done, and it's that whole thing like, oh, this isn't really good enough, and what if I did this? What if I did that? And so here it is, friggin', December the 10th, and it's probably at a minimum viable product now that I could post somewhere, but I haven't yet. that's one of my big struggles is just getting past that point, just putting something out there.
Hmm. Is it nervousness of being judged for your code, or is it kind of like the 80-20 principle, just getting that final step done?
It's probably a little bit of both, but it's mostly, I think, just that nervous, like, oh, well, this isn't really good enough. And well, if you just click here and it just kind of does this, it doesn't really do this, and you're so like, but then to try and figure out how to get it to there, it's like, oh shit, that's going to be a lot harder. And so I should still get it done though. I should still just do something and get it posted somewhere.
I know what you mean.
You'll
What
learn
language
way
is yours?
more. You'll learn way more from finishing something poorly than from having something perfect in your mind but never actually finished.
Yeah.
Like when I put together Tea and Tech, I was nervous because I'm like, well, I can get this right at first, but then I'm just like, I just want to meet with some people and hang out. And so I put together a little Google Hangouts or whatever meeting. And, the first few weeks, one person showed up. And then the next week, I think two, or they started to grow a little bit. One week, then nobody showed up, which actually worked out great. But anyway, it's grown over time. And it's like, if I hadn't just started and just like kept iterating on it, it wouldn't be where it is today, which is something I enjoy so much. I get so much out of doing this each week. And just thinking, if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have this now.
Yeah, I've gotten to the point where this group is my favorite time of the week. I've got ideas, things that I bring to the table. Can't wait to talk about. I think it's amazing how. Oh, absolutely. I have to tell myself to not chat too much usually.
Now with the Slack, we can chat week long. So maybe you won't show up next week. It'll be all my fault.
And you never saw me again.
Right.
Getting a little emotional here, isn't it?
It's the end of the year. A lot of reflection.
And
Yeah.
a lot of accomplishments.
I actually ran
and failure.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I said he's right. It's the end of the year, so you get to reflect on all of that.
I ran a Toastmasters meeting this week, and it was a little different. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Toastmasters. Anybody ever done that?
Heard about it.
Okay. But it's essentially a group devoted to helping people become better at public speaking. And so typically you join a group and they meet every week or two, and you give it every meeting, a couple people give a prepared speech, and then you do like a table topics, which is spontaneous speaking, and then there's evaluations, and you've got a grammarian and who counts like filler words, and you have a timer who times the speeches. It's actually quite regimented, which is a little scary at first, but it makes it, I've come to really love it, which is surprising to me. But this week we did one kind of celebration, and we just did all table topics. So we had 7 table topics, and they're just speeches like 1 to 2 minutes long. And so I was the MC this week, and I decided to create table topics in 3 categories. One with holidays, and then 2020, which was kind of year in review, reflection, and then 2021, which was looking forward, which was, hey, what are you going to do in 2021? What does that look like? And I thought it was really fun. Those are my favorites, is thinking about what am I going to do in 2021 that's going to make the difference. So, one of the questions was like, what person are you going to make a deliberate effort to connect with or develop a stronger relationship with in 2021. And I think that that's valuable for really anybody to consider, because, you know, connections and network, they make such a difference in everything in our lives. You know, you talk about work, but you also talk about happiness and you know, culture and satisfaction.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I've got a couple of friends that I connect with on a really regular basis, and some folks I haven't seen for a while. But I mean, that's and 2020 has been so so hard on keeping up some relationships, and
Mm-hmm.
absolutely, that's good stuff. Now, with Toastmasters, is that how do you find, or how did you get into that, or is there like a Cincinnati group, or are there like bunches of different groups in Cincinnati?
So I think there's probably a couple dozen in Cincinnati, if I had to guess. We have within Kroger, I think 4 or 5 different groups just within Kroger. So we've got one at GO and one at Atrium and 2 at BTC and one at in the 8451, and they all kind of meet separately. But it's yeah, so different companies will have, there's lots of different opportunities to do that. If you just look it up on the Toastmasters website, you can find one near you that you can join. So as far as any of that, I'd recommend, I don't have, I'm a member of a Kroger specific one. It's actually a closed club, so you have to work there to be a part of it. I can reach out, and some of it depends on where you are. Like right now it's all virtual. So, and some of them plan to remain virtual or always have been virtual. So if that appeals to you, that's an option. Or if you are interested in one where, you know, come, you know, summer or whenever we get back to meeting in person again, you'd like to meet in person, you may want to find one that's convenient for you to meet in person. So yeah, I would start with the Toastmasters website. I actually have a friend who helped us start the Kroger one, who has good advice, and I can reach out to her if you'd like some advice on that part.
Yeah, I actually did completed the Dale Carnegie course a whole bunch of years ago, and it's somewhat similar in the sense that a lot of it's driven around, you know, getting comfortable with public speaking and stuff like that, and which I really enjoyed that a lot.
David, you never attended one where you didn't get the award for most filler words?
And I actually think I'm a pretty good public speaker. Like I did Toastmasters because I actually, before I moved to Cincinnati, I ran for school board in the town I was living in. So I did Toastmasters for a year to meet people in the community and also work in my public speaking. And
yeah,
it was like every time I spoke for like 7 minutes, there was like 15 ums.
It happens. I'm not one to judge. I had plenty in this meeting this week.
Yep.
So.
All right. I hate to say it. I got to run. I'm going to take off, everyone. Sorry to interrupt.
It's almost 5, so thank you, Randy.
Okay.
Enjoy your evening.
I'll see you on Slack.
Talk to you all soon.
All right.
Thanks.
See ya.
There you go.
Yeah.
David, you ran for school board?
Yep. It was something I've been meaning to do for like a lot of years, but got my butt kicked. I came 6th out of 6 candidates. But I wasn't.
How many got in?
3 actually. 3. So
Okay.
2 years before that, I thought about running and didn't. And then in that year, 3 people ran for 4 spots in the school board. So you literally all you had to do was sign up. And then the year I ran, it was right after the presidential elections, and people were so upset after 2016 that, you know, there's just gobs of people who were energized to run for something like that. And my beliefs, I don't think didn't match the town I was running in. So I think that kind of hurt me quite a bit.
Gotcha.
No, good for you for doing it. I mean,
Thanks.
Yeah.
it just seems like something you do when you were a lot older and wiser, you know. I mean, I don't know how old you are, but I'm sure you're younger than I am. I
Well, you
don't
know,
qualify for that job.
how was it? I know that I look younger than I actually am. And so like before I ran, one of the things I did was I started wearing glasses. And what was it? I knocked like a lot of doors, and I've only knocked doors in like areas where people voted. And after the election, I looked at it, and the people who like doors I knocked didn't like, or the areas I knocked didn't vote for me any more than the people who did. And I wonder if so many people were like, "You look like you're 20."
No, I'm 22, really. I swear.
Yeah. I swear I can buy beer.
Yeah, so it was a lesson in humility, I guess. So
Good experience. Well,
I think I've said it before, but I applied to speak at conferences for years before I ever got accepted for one. What were you gonna say, David?
this is what I've been thinking about for the last few days.
So tell us about it. 50K, is that what that says? Awesome.
50K.
When are you doing that?
Saturday.
Dude, that's no joke.
Yeah. Yeah.
So would that be considered an ultra
Yes.
marathon? Okay. So anything over 22 is an ultra marathon. Is that right?
Anything over the standard marathon distance of 26.2.
Oh, right. Sorry.
So yeah,
Gotta
so
fix
that's my preoccupying thought.
I can imagine. Have you done that distance?
The longest I've done a couple weeks ago, I did 26.6.
Okay.
So yeah, so I'm running it with my brother. I've done officially, I've done 2 marathons. Unofficially, I've done a couple other runs that have been that long. So yes, so this one's 50K, 31 miles, about 4,000 feet of elevation, total elevation climb. So yeah.
Wow.
Where is
Well,
it?
good luck, David.
Yeah, and I rolled my ankle about a week and a half ago too.
How was that recovering?
I'm getting there.
Okay.
I'm getting there. So, but I should be okay. I'm running it with my brothers. That'll be fun.
Good.
So
Good.
yeah, knock out my last big physical accomplishment for the year, and then I can focus on the runway to Tech Elevator.
That's great.
Where is the marathon?
Saturday.
Where? Location?
Salt Fork State Park. So it's in Ohio. It's about an hour east of Columbus.
Okay.
It's
You got to drive. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going up tomorrow. Got a hotel. Spend the night Friday night,
Nice.
and start about 8:45 Saturday morning, and hopefully it'll should be about 6 hours or 5.5 hours. We'll see.
Cool.
oh, that's
All right,
different
well, I
than,
gotta-
East Fork. I was trying to because I was like, I've been to that park. It's only like an hour from Cincinnati, but no, you're talking about a different one. It took me a while to think that through. Sorry, Michael, I interrupted you there.
You're fine. No problem. I am going to jump here in just a minute or two, hang out with the family and do dinner and stuff like that. But if anybody has any trouble getting in the Slack, or if you have any questions, always don't hesitate to reach out to me. You got my email, or you can find me on all the social medias and stuff. So, but yeah, I look forward to seeing people's progress on Advent of Code. I think that'll be fun to keep track of. And so you only get points if you complete within a certain amount of time, is that right? Or how does that work?
I want to say you get points regardless. It's just that
Okay.
the closer you complete it to the release time of 12 a.m., the
Mhm.
more points you get. So the
Yeah.
folks you see at the top of the global leaderboard are people who, are there at 12
That's
a.m.
second.
They've got it done
Yeah.
by like 12:10 or whatever.
I know my coworker said that he checked the other day, and all 100 for that day that were like in the leadings completed within 4 minutes.
Oh my goodness.
I'm like, I'm probably just getting my IDE set up, in that period of
Right.
time.
Right. Yeah, and I would say like so the point thing in the leaderboard is fun, but it's also one of those I wouldn't worry too much
Right.
about it for anyone starting late or anything like that. Like just
Exactly.
it's just fun to do. It's fun to do with other people. I can say that because I'm in either the number 1 spot or the number 2 spot in my 2 leaderboards. So
I think the other thing was it was surprisingly fun in
Yeah.
my opinion. Like
Yeah.
I like writing code, but it was like, wow, this is refreshing.
Yeah.
In a way.
I bailed after about a week last year. And I will say this year so far, the time commitment per day is significantly less. And I don't know if that's the problems or if that's me or both, but I have felt like it's easier to get through the problems this year on a daily basis than it was last year. But I don't know, just in case anyone did it last year and was discouraged by the time commitment, because I know I was. After, like I said, a week of it, I was like, all right, I'm out.
Yeah.
Oh, that, and last year they had one particular problem that like you solved on day like 2 or 3 that you then iterated on for like day 5 and then day 7 and by like I think by day 7 the like next iteration I was like, oh my gosh, I did not design for this at all. Like I am practically going to have to start from scratch. And that was very discouraging. Whereas so far this year, like each day has been a separate, isolated problem. You get it done, you get something new the next day, which for this kind of thing, I think that's probably better.
Cool. All right. Well, friends.
Yep.
Take care. I look forward to seeing you next week. And maybe have a featured guest or something then. We'll see.
Have a good
Thanks
one.
again for hosting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.
Take care, everybody. See you.
Okay.